Here we're going to look at Ospf virtual links. Ospf has a requirement that says all areas need to connect to the backbone, or need to connect to area 0. And area 0 needs to be contiguous. If for some reason your area 0 becomes discontiguous, or you end up with an edge area that's not connected back to area 0, you can temporarily configure virtual links. And what would cause that? I mean, a failure within area 0 could maybe cause that. You could have two separate networks. Both had run Ospf at one time with their own separate area 0s, and now you need to connect them together or merge them. And so in those instances, we can go ahead and configure a virtual link, and it's really pretty easy. A couple rules with virtual links. The virtual link can't go through a stub. And the second is that we can't go through more than one area. So if we needed to go through more than one area in order to get to area 0 or in order to connect to the backbone, we would actually have to configure multiple virtual links to step through each of those areas. So we'll go ahead and look at it. Here's the topology that I've set up. Here we have area 0. And area 0 is connected to area 1. Area 2 is connected to area 1. Right? I've already pre-configured all the IP addresses. I've already configured Ospf as the routing protocol. I've already configured the areas. So everything is ready to go. All we really need to do is just verify connectivity real quick, or lack thereof, and then configure our virtual links, and that's it. So let's go ahead and bring over router 1 and verify where we do and don't have connectivity to. All right. So if we do a show IP route, what we're seeing is these are directly connected. These are our loopback interfaces that I configured. And a lot of times the only reason I configured the loopbacks in this particular topology was just to have extra networks as an example to see what's propagating and what's not. And then we have the 10.1.3.1 loopback network that I created, which was on router 3, which is in area 1. Directly connected networks of 1, and then the network that we're getting from router 2 that we're directly connected to. So just for a second, we'll go back to our picture. Area 1, everything within area 1, if I look at R1, everything connected to the backbone and within the backbone I should see, and I did. We saw 10.1.3 network, R192.168, and all our directly connected networks. What we didn't see were the things that were in area 2, the loopback addresses that I created here and advertised. And again, only did that so that we would have networks to look at to prove that in fact we're not propagating, and then when we configure our virtual links, we will be propagating these networks, and we should then see them over there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to build a virtual link between R2 and R3. So we're just going to, I don't, it always reminds me of like a collapsed core, but it's not. It's a virtual link. We're going to configure each side R2 to point to R3's router ID, and we're going to have R3 point to R2's router ID and tell it that it's a virtual link. So now we build a link here that will go ahead and connect area 2 then to this area 0. So let's do that. All right, we're in R1 right now. Let's go ahead and we're going to move over to what we need to create the virtual link between R2 and R3 so that we connect our area 2 to our area 0. So the first thing we're going to need, if we want to configure it on R2, is to go ahead and find out what our router IDs are. Let's go back to our picture again, just as a little reminder. Our router ID on R2, router IDs are chosen, either we explicitly configure them, right, with the router ID command under the router Ospf process. If they're not explicitly configured, then first it would be the highest loopback address would be the router ID. If there's no loopback address, then it would be the highest active physical address. So in this case, that should be our router ID for R2 should be 192.168.2.1, And for R3, it should be this loopback address here, 10.1.3, right? Because we look at, these are obviously higher addresses, but rule of thumb is first configured router ID, second highest loopback address, third highest physical address. So now let's go back and look at our router IDs and just double check that they are what we think they are so that we can build our virtual link. All right, R2, show. We can either do one of two things, show IP OSPF, or we can do a show IP protocol. So we see that our router ID for R2 is 192.168.2.1, just like we expected it would be. Over here, I'll use the show IP protocol, show IP OSPF command, just two different commands to get the same information that we want to get. And routing process OSPF1 with router ID 10.1.3.1, which is our highest loopback address. So we're good to go. Pretty easy here. Now all we have to do is go into our OSPF process, area. The area that we want to be our virtual link, or in essence the area that we want to cross over in order to connect area 2 with area 0 is area 1. So we'll do area 1, virtual-link, and then the router ID of my neighbor. So I'm sitting in R2 right now. Our router ID of my neighbor is R3's router ID, which is 10.1.3.1. Go ahead and hit enter. Now as we move over into R3, let's go ahead and configure it over in R3. Router OSPF1, area 1 again. Whoop. Virtual link, wow. And then that is then the neighbor, which would be R2's router ID, which we said was 192.168.2.1, I hope. And hit enter, and then we'll go ahead and verify our routes and things. Which you'll also notice too, if we just waited a moment, our adjacencies now came up. We didn't have an adjacency before connecting those. So if we go back into R1, assuming I pre-configured everything correctly, because literally the virtual link command is that simple, we should be able to do a show IP route and see all our other routes. And we do. And really, guys, this is all there is to it. We've got all our connected routes. Now, we always had this route, right, because he was part of area 1 on R3. But now we also have all the stuff from area 2. These are our two loopbacks from area 2. And it's telling me it's OSPF inner area. And these are our IP addresses from area 2 on the physical links, also inner area. Literally, that was it. The biggest thing is to remember our rules, right? The rule is first that we have to connect back to the backbone always. The backbone has to be contiguous. If for some reason we can't connect back to the backbone or the backbone is discontiguous, right, then we can go ahead and configure virtual link. We can only configure one virtual link, or it can only go through one area. We can configure multiple virtual links, but your virtual link can only go through one area. So if you have to go through more than one area, you'll configure more than one virtual link, and your virtual link can't go through a stub. And that is it.